That record button. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday. It is May 31st. June is right around the corner. When we wake up tomorrow, it's going to be a new month. Hard to believe, that the past month just went by so fast. That's the journey of life, walking it, enjoying life, healing, growing, building. And so we're so honored that you could join us this Wednesday afternoon with Can Do. It is Webinar Wednesday. So happy that you are here. It's an honor. My name is Michelle. I'm joining from Mishkwanakwet, Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory. Always really important to acknowledge, the land in which you live on, the land in which you can create business, that you can grow, that you can develop personally and professionally, acknowledging the ancestors who walked before us, who paved the way, that today in 2023, we can live in a good way. We can follow, the calls of our heart, the dreams Creator has given to us. So we want to take a moment always to, press pause, take that deep breath in and acknowledge, this day, this gift that has been given to us from Creator. I always like to remind us that even in our dark days, there is always light. There's always something good, because Creator, that's who Creator brings. Creator brings that goodness into our world. You don't have to look very far to see that there's something good in your world. So I hope we can just take a moment to honor and extend that gratitude for this journey, this life that has been given to us, even on the hard days. So we give thanks for the gift of Mother Earth, the lands, and all that she provides. We give thanks for the gift of our relatives, the animals, the plants, the sacred waters, the medicines that we're going to harvest in a couple of months. Some people are already beginning to harvest. We also want to give thanks to, our family, our chosen family, because, part of this journey is we're here walking it together. We're here to, inspire and learn from one another. And so that's what these webinars are about. We have Stephen here joining us from Ontario, and who's going to bring some really good knowledge. And hopefully, as you walk away, as you learn, as you take in the teachings and the knowledge and the story that he's going to bring today, that you will walk away inspired. You will walk away with, hey, I want to do this and this and this. And part of this journey is building the capacity and putting more tools into your toolbox, because I believe knowledge is power. So that's what this is all about, that we can grow and build our own capacity. And we're not alone. We never walk alone in Creator's world. So welcome, welcome. I hope that you are doing well today. It is my honor to introduce our guest speaker. Stephen McCoy is joining us. And the workshop is Starting a Business. So this is just part one. So there's more to come. So today's workshop, we're going to explore the topic of starting a business, beginning with a reality check. I love reality checks, and self-assessment to help understand what it takes to become an entrepreneur and what to expect along the journey. The workshop also will examine what a competitive advantage is and why it is key in developing a compelling backstory. So the workshop will go over a startup checklist. I love checklists as well, with suggested steps to complete when starting a business. And I think that this is important, whether you have been in the business for a while, or whether you're thinking about starting one, or you're just starting, wherever you are along that journey. I believe all this information is sometimes just a really good refresher, a good reminder. Sometimes we need that extra boost of inspiration to keep the journey going. And sometimes we just need the very pragmatic tools and the advice that's passed on to us. So great to have you here, Stephen McCoy. He is an Ojibwe member of the Garden River First Nation and a lifelong resident of the city of Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario. So we are honored to have him here. His Indigenous name is Red Cloud, and he's a member of the Mukwa, the Bear Clan. He is the CEO and founder of Gencity Inc., which evolved from his own part-time consulting business he started in 2012. He then rebranded his business into Gencity Consulting in 2018, which he recently incorporated into Gencity Inc. So in 2022, his company was awarded Indigenous Business of the Year. Congratulations from the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce. Wow. So he specializes in marketing, communications, consulting, public speaking, events management, and Indigenous liaison. So here we have an incredible, remarkable entrepreneur who's going to lend his gifts, he's going to lend his knowledge, he's going to lend what he's experienced throughout his own journey. So we are honored. We feel that we're very we're taking a moment to acknowledge the genius that, you know, Creator had made you to be. So thank you so much for being here and lending us your time, your story, your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom. And I really look forward to hearing what you have to bring to the table this afternoon. So Stephen, I'm going to pass this virtual mic off to you. There will be opportunity, everybody, for any questions or comments at the end. But if you have any questions along the way, put in the chat box. We'll make sure to make note of them and we'll bring them up in the discussion as we have opportunity at the end. So Stephen, I'm passing the mic to you. Thanks for being here.
Wow, Chimigwich Michelle for the very gracious words and the warm welcome, and for starting us off in a good way. And I want to say welcome to our guests who are able to join us today. Jonathan, salutes to you. My friend, are you here in the Sioux? Yeah, so me and Jonathan, we already know each other already on a basis, so it's good to see you here. So Ken as well, welcome here. We got a nice small intimate group, so I can kind of personalize my presentation to both of you a little bit more, so that's great. So I do have a presentation here that I'm just going to go through and follow. I've already been introduced, so there's not much more to say about myself. It's already been said, so it's great as well. You know, just to give you a little bit of background, these logos that you're looking at, of course, Gencity is my business that I'm currently running. Indigenous Biz is also another project that I've founded that comes from my creative mind. It's a platform where I like to highlight Indigenous people in business and kind of give a different spotlight to our Indigenous people in the media, because a lot of times you hear of us, we're either protesting or we're either just negative news cycles. So it's a different spin on things, and it's a way to encourage people to look at Indigenous people as in business, and that to take a different take. So be sure to check it out as well on your spare time when you can. So just as Michelle did cover what topics we're going to be going over, a self-assessment. I'm going to be throwing a lot of stats at you with some facts, some figures, reality of what it's like and what you should expect as being an entrepreneur if you want to get into this realm. And as well, what is your story? The value proposition is very important. So anytime someone says, hey, I want to start a business, they're going to be like, great. What is it? What are you selling? And why should we buy it? And that's what your value proposition is going to be. I'm going to show you how to create a good one for your business if you do decide to open up your own business. And then as well, we're going to go through a checklist, which is more of a guide. There's no hard and fast rules that say these are the steps you need to take to start a business, but it is a general guideline, and it will help you with your decision-making process if you do decide to open a business. So because we do have a small group, I just want to put both you, Ken and Jonathan, on the spot for a second so I can kind of tweak my presentation to you specifically. Jonathan, are you looking to start a business or just getting some information today?
You know what? I'm actually, I've been considering, starting my own business as well, something similar to your journey as well. Doing a little bit of consulting, but understanding I'm so junior in terms of understanding what steps need to be taken, what things to be cautious of, what things to be mindful of. So I haven't done anything in terms of registering a business. So this was when I seen this webinar come up, I was like, this is perfect. I want to learn as much as I can.
Perfect. Perfect. And anybody else on the line? Ken, Michelle, is anybody else looking to start a business or looking just to get information today from the workshop? Okay, well, I can gear it all to Jonathan then. That's not a problem. But this is recorded, so I will keep it in general as well for people who do want to check it out online as well through the Candy site. So just moving on here with what we got. So moving on to the self-assessment. So like I said, I want to throw some fun facts at you for entrepreneurs. So 98% of businesses in Canada are actually made up of small businesses. Small businesses are defined as 100 employees or less. So as you can see, small businesses do make up a lot of the GDP, and they're the lifeline of businesses in Canada. Now, starting a business, the facts are 20% of them fail within the first year. These facts are pretty general, and they go across most westernized civilizations like Canada, US, Europe, places that have low barriers to start a business. The stats are pretty general across the board, and they've been pretty steady since the 1900s. But the facts are 20% of businesses do fail within the first year, and only about a third of them survive to see year 5. So there is a high failure rate when it does come to starting a business. And these facts, these are just plain facts of the game. And these stats are starting to change dramatically over the last few years because of the changes with COVID, with the macroeconomic environment that's taking place, with the war that's taking place, with the change in interest rates. That's starting to change and push a lot of these stats around, but these are pretty steady for the last 20, 30 years. So what we're also seeing in trends is the younger generations are having a lot of side hustles. Now, side hustles aren't part-time jobs. They're more of, say you have a full-time job, but on the side, you might clean some houses on the side directly for some customers. Or maybe you've got a small printing press where you're pressing t-shirts in your garage at night and you're selling some shirts online, in addition to the couple part-time jobs that you have. With the low barriers to entry, with internet access and access to cheaper equipment and things to make certain products, we're seeing a lot of younger generations tapping into side hustles and having side businesses now. Now, the stats obviously show that the more education you have and experience you have in business, the more successful you're going to be if you open up your own business. So if you have business training, if you have experience in any sort of business economic development roles, or if you've actually run your own business in the past, then you're more likely to succeed if you open up another business. Sometimes running a business, most times a lot of people fail. And that's just as you see, those are part of the stats. But a lot of entrepreneurs will still try something else. And they might fail at a business, so they try it again, or what they tried didn't work. And they tweak that business as they go. But the more experience you have, the more successful you'll be. And the number one reason why people fail is that there's no market demand for the product that they're trying to sell. So sometimes you got to be careful when people tell you, or these motivational speakers say, go after your passions and just go after your dreams and the money will follow. Not all the time. In business, if you're trying to push a product or service into a market where there's no demand, then you're pushing a failed product, basically. So, for example, here locally, the guy that founded the GFL garbage collection company that you see everywhere, those yellow bins, the yellow trucks. That guy's actually from Sault Ste. And he started his business. Do you think he was really passionate about garbage? He wasn't, but he saw an opportunity and a gap in the market to fill, and he had a business model that could fill it. And he saw an opportunity to make money. And so that's what he did as an entrepreneur. That's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They recognize a gap or a problem in the market, and they come in to help fill that gap or solve that problem. So another good example is if you're really passionate about snow globes, but you live in Southern Texas or New Mexico and you try selling snow globes there, it's not going to work. You're trying to push a product into a market where there's no demand. And that's usually the number one reason why businesses fail. So those are some fun facts I wanted to throw at you. Some financial facts as well. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to need funds to start it. And where are those funds going to come from? Well, a good majority of people have to fund their own businesses from their own pockets. 66% use their own personal funds to start a business. The other 15% use bank loans, usually in the form of, say, a line of credit, which will be lent to you with some prime interest rate plus whatever they deem as suitable based on your credit rating. 13% of people turn to family or friends to fund their business idea. Now, this can cause problems. It can cause friction in your relationships for obvious reasons, especially if the business fails and you can't pay back your family or friends. So that's part of being in this business, but it does happen. You do see it. 10% of people use credit cards to fund their business, which is not ideal, especially when credit card rates can be 20 to 30%. It's hard to carry a high balance on your credit cards, do it that way. Less than 5% use investors or grants or crowdfunding. And this is where you might be asking yourself, as an Indigenous person, don't I have access to a lot of different funding avenues out there? Not so much. We will talk a little bit about what's available though. And then 60% of businesses start out with less than $25,000. So those are some fun financial facts I want to throw your way. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, here are some things that you should know that it's going to involve. One, long hours. People have a misconception that if they start a business and they become an entrepreneur, they're going to be able to make their own hours and spend time however they please. Not so much. Now, remember the stats that we just looked at. If you survive to see year 5, then yeah, you might start be able to make more time for yourself. You might be able to start hiring people to take things off your plate. That's when you'll start reaping some rewards. But that's if you survive the stats and you make it that long. In those years, in order to get to that time, you have to put in the hours. You have to put in long hours every day, on the weekends, working holidays, working evenings. Are you willing to put in that time year after year for a sustained amount of time? 5+ years, maybe, before you start seeing results, because there is no instant gratification in this world or in this business. So are you willing to sacrifice those long hours? Personal sacrifices as well. So does your spouse or loved ones around you, do they support your idea? When you say, hey, I want to start a business, are they supportive or are they throwing shade at you? You got to be able to gauge that and assess that. We just looked at the stats of where the money comes from. So are you willing to front your own money and maybe ask friends or pull it from the bank or the credit cards in order to fund your endeavors? Are you willing to do that? Again, we just talked about the time that it takes. What's more important to you, Call of Duty or the latest Netflix series, or spending time with your friends in the evenings and weekends, or working on your business during those times? Those are things that you got to decide. Also, as an entrepreneur, you have to have an ability to take on risks. Are you a risk taker, or are you to prefer to err on the side of caution? Are you risk adverse? Because if you are, entrepreneurship can be very difficult for you. Because as an entrepreneur, most successful ones take risks. They take calculated risks based on their decision-making process. Yes, a lot do fail, but that's part of the game. There's a risk that's involved, and you got to be able to sometimes be able to roll with those risks. And you have to be comfortable not knowing the outcomes a lot of the time. You might not know if you're going to be able to survive to the end of the year, or be able to make payroll maybe for a couple of weeks. You might not know where your next contract will come from. So are you used to getting a paycheck every 2 weeks from a job? Are you okay with not getting that now and not having that security that comes with the job and trying to secure contracts on your own? These are unknown outcomes that you will have to deal with. Also, handling finances. How are you at handling it? Are you used to money just showing up in the form of a direct deposit every 2 weeks from your employer in your bank account, and you just kind of spend and manage your personal expenses? Because once you become an entrepreneur, it's a totally different ballgame. When you have to invoice people and you're collecting checks and you're getting deposits, and you got to open up your own business accounts and bank accounts and make payments and do collections and make sure you're investing your money properly back into your business. do you have that capacity to handle your finances, or do you have the ability to hire someone to help you? Those are all things you need to think about as an entrepreneur. You also got to manage legalities and liabilities. This is a huge one. Are you comfortable working with lawyers? If you're opening up an actual physical space, where a store space, say, where people have to come onto your property, have you mitigated all the risks in case somebody slips and falls and wants to sue you? What if you're a consultant and you provide some advice to someone and they tank and their business goes under and they blame you and they want to sue you for the advice and the business plan that you wrote for them? Do you have the proper insurances in place to handle that? What if you get a patent and you're an inventor and you get a trademark or a patent on something, and then someone tries to copycat you, which will happen if you're very good at what you do? Are you willing to, pursue legalities and the legal ways to protect your patent and to protect your trademarks? So these are all risks that you got to manage as an entrepreneur. And if you survive to see year 5, you still got to be always evolving and learning. And look at marketing for myself as an example. Marketing just 10 years ago, the only avenues really that you looked at marketing were newspapers and prints, radio, TV ads, door-to-door sales. Can you imagine trying to do door-to-door sales now? You knock on someone's door, you might get shot, right? But now you got online marketing, your social media marketing, TikTok videos. As a marketer, you have to be able to adjust. And for me, I have to learn and evolve with that as I go. And so if you're into the business, you have to be able to learn and evolve your business as you go as well. So those are some things to expect as an entrepreneur. So here's some Indigenous facts for you as an entrepreneur. In Canada, there are over 60,000 plus Indigenous owned businesses in Canada. And that's recently as of 2021 or so, these stats. These are pretty recent stats that I pulled here. The Canadian GDP, or the Indigenous economy in 2020 contributed almost $50 billion to the Canadian GDP, which is huge. And it's predicted to reach $100 billion by next year. So take a look at the book and the institute entitled Indigenomics by Carol Ann Hilton. She's predicted this back in 2016, 2017 or so. And she does very good work in the field of promoting Indigenous people in business as well. NACA has provided over $3 billion in loans to Indigenous business entrepreneurs in Canada. Now, NACA is the overseeing body that distributes the money that comes from the government that is set aside for Indigenous business entrepreneurs to tap into. So they distribute that money down to the regional level. So locally here, for us, it would be like Wabatech or NADF that we would go to if we wanted to subscribe or apply for Indigenous funding as a business owner. And when people ask, well, isn't there a lot of money out there? I was like, well, yes and no. So for example, if you were to go to a NACA or AFI or a Wabatech, they're called, and you had a business idea and you wanted, say, $100,000, there's a formula that they usually stick to where a certain percentage of that, if they approve you, a certain percentage of that will be in the form of a grant, maybe about 30 to 40% of it. And then another large chunk of it will be in the form of a loan, where they'll loan you it, like say 50%, and then you pay them back that amount with some interest. And then a smaller percent, say 10% of it, you'll have to front on your own as part of the project. And there's certain things these AFIs will not fund. So a lot of people that start their business part-time, well, if you're working at part-time, they won't fund that. If it's an online business part-time, they won't fund that either. So there's a lot of, if it's just for employees, they won't fund it. They won't fund part of that if it's to pay employees. So there is some money available, but you gotta apply for it, and it's not all in the form of free grants or anything like that. And it's based because of the stats. Like, starting a business is not an easy thing to do, and a lot of them fail. So they've got to have some sort of backstop and way to filter out and ensure that they're going to get some of their money back, or that some of their money is invested properly and going to see some good returns in the form of successful businesses. So another fun fact for you, Indigenous population is growing faster than Canada's population, which is good for future trends. As you can see, us Indigenous people, we create our own businesses 9 times over the average Canadian, which is a very awesome stat. And it speaks to the fact that we are the original traders of this country. A lot of people like to think that we were unorganized and weren't sophisticated, but no, we had our own sophisticated methods of market trade and commerce and economic development in place. And we are now reclaiming our seat back at the economic development tables and asserting our rights and asserting our voice and having a say in how business is done these days. So it's great to see. So that takes me to the end of the self-assessment. And if you want to learn some more about yourself to see if you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, just type in your favorite search engine, BDC Entrepreneur Self-Assessment. It'll take you to this link that's here as well. I'll throw it in the chat for anyone who would like to have it. And you can copy and paste it for later and check it out. There we go. Okay, so next I'm going to move on to the value proposition. This is going to be your story. And that's why I have the billboard there, because it's value proposition is actually a marketing term. So you need to know how to market yourself as a business owner and entrepreneur moving forward. So a value proposition, it identifies your product and service with clear, measurable, demonstrable benefits that the consumers will get when buying it. So it's basically your story or your elevator pitch is what I mentioned before. If you tell somebody, hey, I want to start a business, the first thing that they're going to ask you is like, great, what is it and why should we buy it? So that's your elevator pitch. You need to be able to describe quickly what your product and service is, what the benefits of it are, what problem it fixes or fills in the marketplace, and what benefits the customer is going to get from buying it from you. So that's your value proposition. And it's very important. And the key elements of a good value proposition, as I mentioned, it identifies a problem or a gap in the market. So if there's no other competition in the market, then your value proposition can be pretty simple. It doesn't have to be too complex. But if you have a lot of competition in the market, you're going to have a very clearly defined value proposition as to why people should buy your product and service over the competition's. So with that, you need to articulate why your product or service is so special. What benefits does the customer have, or what problems will you be able to solve for the customer if they come to you and decide to spend their money with you? And you need to be able to communicate those benefits of your product and service to your target market. So you need to be able to easily explain to people what you're offering and why they should buy it from you. So with that, you need to have a thorough understanding of who you're marketing it to, or like, who is your target market? What's the demographics? The demographics are things like age, their sex, their marital status, education, income levels. You need to know that who you want to target, and you need to know their motivations and what speaks to their desires and their emotions when you're articulating a good value proposition. So here's some examples of some value propositions. Uber, we reimagine the way the world moves for the better. It's not a bad proposition. They used to have another one which kind of was a little bit more succinct, and it kind of took a direct hit at the taxi industry without even mentioning the taxi industry, which they kind of do here as well. Like they're saying, we reimagine the way the world moves. So they're saying we want to redesign how you instead of getting a taxi and having a frustrated taxi cab driver who's trying to take directions on how to get to where you want to go and you're worrying about having bills and enough cash to pay for it, Uber's reimagining that for you. And they're able to capture that in a quick value proposition there. Grammarly is a great example of all 3 elements that I just mentioned. So they identify a problem, they introduce a solution, and they introduce how they're going to solve that problem. So their solution is great writing simplified. The problem is, if you're trying to make clear content, so compose, bold, clear, mistake-free writing. And how are they going to solve it? Well, they use an AI-powered writing assistant to help you solve that problem. So there's all 3 elements they've captured, because there is competition in this field as well. So why would you want to use Grammarly? They captured that all all three elements right there for you. And then as an Indigenous example, Kakuli Cafe. So this is one of the girls I've actually interviewed. So check out her interview on my Indigenous Biz platform. But their value proposition, don't panic, we have Bannock. So it's quick. And like I said, there's not much competition in her field. So it can be a very simplified value proposition. It's telling you what she has, Bannock, which is also identifying who the target market is, because only a specific target market is going to know what Bannock is. And the slogan tagline is very popular with that target market. And you're introducing a problem. So when people are hungry, sometimes they can get hangry. So don't panic. We've got Bannock. So there you go. So there's some examples of some very succinct, good value propositions. So I'm moving on to our checklist. So our checklist is pretty in depth. So I want to spend a little bit of time here on what we're going to cover on this section of the workshop. Excuse me. So what we're going to need here as a checklist, and again, this is a guideline. It's not a hard and fast rules. It's more of a checklist to help guide your decision-making process along the way and give you an idea of what you're going to have to all expect when you're opening up a business. So number one, you want to have a business plan. And there's different types of business plans you can create, and we will cover that in shortly here. And then you want to have some good branding. So you want to have a recognizable, something that defines you to your customers, and they can separate you from the competition from that branding. With the branding includes a name. So we will cover some legalities when it comes to the name. For example, if you're operating just under your name alone, you don't need to do a name search or purchase a name, domain, or anything like that. But the moment you add something to your name, say Stephen McCoy Consulting or consultant or business consultant, then now I got to do a name search and make sure that I'm not, that nobody else is using that same name as well. So, and then it's got to be registered. And then we're going to talk about legal structures. So when you do start a business and get a master business license, they're going to ask you a few questions like, what's your structure look like? So you need to know what the legal structures are, what your benefits of having each one or choosing which one. So we'll talk about that as well in this section. And we did touch on cash and capital investments, because you're going to need some cash and capital. And where is that going to come from as an entrepreneur? So we're going to touch a few on that as well, which we did touch a little bit in the stats. Location requirements, where are you going to perform your business from? So this is a bit of I'm sure you're asking as well as an Indigenous person, how does that affect you when it comes to, say, the government and claiming your income? So we'll touch a little bit about that, which leads into the next part, which is staying legal. So if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to understand what legalities you're getting into. So even if you're starting a business from your home, well, there might be regulations in your neighborhood about having a home business. What type of business is it? Is it a home office business, or are you washing cars and putting shampoo products, for vehicles in your driveway, which is getting drained into the drain? Is that legal in your city or wherever you might be wanting to do that? So there's a lot of things you got to think about as an entrepreneur when it comes to the legalities of setting up a business. And with all these moving parts, it's best to work with professionals. And we're going to touch on which professionals you should be working with and why as well in this section. So business plans. Business plans in the past are usually traditionally longer in length and in depth. Smaller ones you see around 15 to 20 pages or so, and then you can see 160 to 100 pages. Again, it all depends on the size of the business that you're looking at starting up and how in depth that business goes. So if you have a small, say, corner store with a few products and not a whole lot of inventory, you're not going to require that large of a business plan for it. But if you're looking at doing a manufacturing production line and then taking that product from raw product and then owning the company that pulls that mining raw product out of the ground and having a virtual or a vertical setup business that's going to have multiple business lines, well, yeah, you're going to have a very large, complex, in-depth business plan that's going to explain all that to your potential investors. Or you can have a shorter summarized lean startup. I've seen business plans that were one pagers with just some appendices and graphs attached. And that can work as well too for the situation. All depends on what your needs are, how big your business is, and what you plan on utilizing your business plan mostly for. So good business plans, they should include at least an executive summary where it describes your product, your service, goes over kind of your value proposition that we discussed before. It's going to discuss marketing strategy and analysis. So people are going to want to know that you've done some market research. There is a market that has a demand for your product, or there's a gap in the market that you've identified that your product or service can fill. People are going to want to know that. They're going to want to know what competition you're facing. So you have to research who else is in this marketplace as well. And you're going to have to do some competition analysis as part of your marketing strategy. And you're also going to have to know what prices and how big the market is, and what percentage of the market do you think you can capture. So these are all going to be in your marketing strategy and analysis and research that you should have done beforehand before starting a business. You're also going to have to include financial planning, which should include quarterly, yearly, multi-year planning as well. So where do you plan on getting your capital financing and startup funds from? What's that going to be invested to? And what you're going to have a budget for everything as well. So what are you expecting in sales? What are you expecting your expenses to be? What's your cost of goods sold is a technical term for it. Do you have any cost of goods? Are going to be having inventory? Or are you more of a consultant that just needs a computer and a phone and a printer type thing? So that's all going to be in your budget and part of your financial analysis as well. Branding. So you have to have a good name, and it has to be able to capture your audience and be able to identify you. So right now we're seeing a large trend when it comes to Indigenous businesses. People are more accepting and seeking out Indigenous businesses to do partnership, relationship development and do business with. So, but in the past, not too long ago, if you were to choose an entirely Indigenous name, that's a risk you're taking, because people before might not want to work with Indigenous businesses. They're clearly identified. And that's still kind of true to this day. Or it might be confusing to the marketplace. Maybe they just don't understand what your product is or what it sells because of the Indigenous name. But you're seeing more acceptance in the marketplace, the more Indigenous businesses are coming out. But that's something you need to ask yourself as well. Do I want to put an Indigenous name on it? And will it be confusing to my customers? Am I willing to educate the marketplace and sacrifice sales for that educational piece? Those are questions you want to ask with a name. And also, you need to find out what kind of logo that you want to have as well, that's going to identify you and separate you from your business. So for my Gencity and my logo, basically when I first started out and I came up with Gencity Consulting, I knew I was wanting to rebrand into a consulting type firm. But when I went to look at a name, all of the cool names that I could think of were already taken, because everybody is a consultant out there. So like Black Rock Consulting or Red Feather Consulting or anything that was kind of a cool mix that I was trying to think of, it was all taken. So what I did was a word exercise and put down a bunch of words that I thought identified what a consultant does and the traits that that person has. And two different names started to pop out of the paper at me, the beginning of one name and the end of another. And then they popped out at me. And that's when I put Gencity together. And that's when I came up with Gencity Consulting. So there's a lot of things that go into the name. And then I researched it a bit. I put it out there to the market and I said, what do you guys think of this name? And a lot of people liked it and it was catchy, and it people were able to identify with it. So I went with it. And it's worked for me to help. I wanted to move from working from small Indigenous small entrepreneurs, and I wanted to move towards working with larger organizations and communities. So that's why I rebranded my look in order to capture a larger audience, and it worked. So it all depends on the name and logos you pick. What kind of colors you choose can be important as well. The colors I chose were blue because blue is a more professional look when it comes to westernized styles. When people look at it, they get more of this certain feeling from a blue color. If you're in food, you see a lot of reds and yellows because reds and yellows induce more of an appetite type feel. So take a look at that when you're traveling around more. And also, if you're going to be doing international work, be careful of what colors you choose, because colors could have different cultural significance as well, depending on what country and what people you're dealing with. So again, it's very important to research your market when you're coming up with your branding of your company. Again, you have to have a good value proposition, which we talked about. It's your story, your elevator pitch. Why should people buy your product from you? You also want to develop a good vision and mission. Some people get that confused and say, well, isn't that the same thing as your value proposition? No, it's not. The mission is more of the goal of your company and what you want to do with your company. So a mission would be, I want to be the largest consulting company in Northern Ontario. That would be a mission. And a vision is like the steps you're going to take to get there. So those would be the difference between all of that. And company values, you can make those as well. They're more of what your company strives to be. And as you get larger, those will become more important to describe to employees and outside investors as well. What does your company base its values off of? So those are things that all go into the branding of your company that you want to think about when you're starting. So with the name, selecting your name, can serve as a sound foundation for future business success. And the opposite can happen. The wrong name can put your business on unstable grounds, jeopardizing your business's future potential. So again, remember, if you're first starting out, you want to be maximizing your results and your success rate, because the stats are stacked against you starting out as an entrepreneur. We just looked at the stats earlier. They're not in your favor to be an entrepreneur. So you want to make sure that you're doing all the proper things to mitigate your risk of failure, right? So having a good name and a good branding is a good way to start out on a good foot. So legal structures, this is something we talked about. So if you're going to start a business, one of the first things you want to get is a master business license, which you can get online for about $70. You can do it yourself, very easy. But one of the questions in this online form that's going to ask you is, what is the structure of your business? And it's going to ask you sole proprietorship, incorporation, partnership, or limited liability. So most small businesses start out originally as a sole proprietorship. So that means you can claim your business under one tax form, and all your business can be run under your same tax form. When you go to your accountant, or if you do your own taxes, you would fill out what's called a T2124 form. And that would be your business activities form. And you would claim that as under your regular tax when do one tax return. Now, it's very easy and simple to set up a sole proprietorship. And again, if you're just operating under your name, say Stephen McCoy or say Jonathan Nolan, consultant, or not even consultant, just Jonathan Nolan, you can run that all under sole proprietorship and not worry about doing a name run. But the moment the problem with a sole proprietorship is that you're open to liability, though. So if somebody wanted to sue you personally because they weren't happy with your results, or your product injured them for some reason, whatever it is, and they try to sue you, whatever you owned on your tax return, they can get. So say if you have a house off reserve, that you pay a mortgage into, and that's part of your tax return, well, that could be exposed being a sole proprietorship. So the way to limit your liability is to incorporate. So if you incorporate your business, you'll see a majority of businesses that you would think mom and pop shops or whatnot, the majority of them are actually incorporated because they want to remove that liability. So if you incorporate your business, which I've done recently, and that's why I'm called now Gencity Inc. So Gencity Inc. is now a separate entity. So when I do my taxes now, I have to do two taxes. I do my own as a individual, Stephen McCoy taxes, and then I have to do another tax return for my incorporation now, Gencity Inc. And anything that's in Gencity Inc. now is separated from me. So if someone wanted to sue my business because of they weren't happy with my results or whatever, they can only sue Gencity Inc. now and whatever's in Gencity Inc. They can't come after any of my personal assets. My personal assets are mine, and they're separated. There's separation there. So that's the benefit to incorporating. But you also have more work and some more expenses because you got to pay for the incorporation and you got to pay for an additional tax return every year. Partnerships are also kind of the same way. You can set up a partnership. So say me and Jonathan want to start a business together. We could do it as a partnership, and we could do it kind of like as a proprietorship between us, where we just claim our own taxes together as one. You know, like he does his taxes as one, I do mine as one, and we claim our business activities together as a partnership in that claim. The problem with the partnership that's like that is that you are now responsible for each other's liabilities. So if you choose a partner that has a gambling problem that you didn't know about, and they get into a lot of debt, and all of a sudden your company gets sued, well, no, you're liable for their debts as well, and vice versa. So the way to limit a liability if you're partnering with someone is to set up a limited liability partnership, and which leads into the last one. So it's like incorporating as a partnership. Same idea. You're going to have a separation there from your operating business and your working personal assets as well. So it's a way to remove that liability. So these are some of the legal structures, the down nitty gritty without getting too involved and in the weeds. That's kind of the basic structure. Again, if you have any questions, just jot them down. I'll be more than happy to answer that at the end. So just want to talk about cash and capital as well. So where would you get cash and capital from? Again, we talked about personal funds. A lot of people end up funding their own endeavors. So for me personally, when I started out, I used my own computer, I used my own phone, I had to use my own office equipment, my own internet, and that was part of my own personal funds, basically. And that's how I started out part-time. And so you'll find that as an entrepreneur that you'll have to use your own personal funds a lot to start out. Now you can always tap into bank loans, as I mentioned. These will probably be in the form of lines of credit, and the lines of credits are based on the whatever the lending rate is, you know, prime plus whatever interest rate they deem you're suitable for based off your credit rating. So again, those bank loans, we're seeing interest and the cost of borrowing go up now. So that's really affecting things like buying a house or getting a business loan, because you're seeing the cost going up, the cost of borrowing. So it's something to think about as an entrepreneur starting out. Again, I mentioned the AFIs, which are funded through NACA. That's the Aboriginal financial institutions. So you can tap into them, see which one is local for your region, and you can do their applications and try and to tap into those funds for your business. Credit cards are always an option, but it's not ideal with the high interest rates unless you have the ability to pay off your credit card before the 30-day mark or 28-day mark, whatever it is, before they start charging the interest rates. That's the only time a credit card can be useful, if you have that ability, and that's what do you call it? You have to have a lot of responsibility, I guess is the word, restraint when you have credit cards. If you can use them in a proper way, they can be beneficial for you, but it's not an ideal way to be carrying a balance over an extended period of time. For cash and capital, a lot of people have to tap into family and friends as well to get that money. Or there's also the angel investors. There's the Northern Ontario Angels that's kind of like pitching to the Dragon's Den. So you're seeing a lot more of that coming up as well. Those are options to get money. But you usually do have to put together a pitch or put together some sort of proposal and some sort of reporting requirements afterwards as well, so they can ensure that you're spending that money properly and appropriately. So those are options for cash and capital as a startup. So the other things you want to think about is location. So what type of business are you looking to start up? Is it a home office type business? Are you going to be operating on or off reserve? Because that's going to affect whether or not you're going to be collecting taxes and paying taxes as well. As an Indigenous person, that's just another additional piece of information that you're going to need to know and utilize properly. Are you working out of the basement or your garage? As I mentioned, like say, a lot of people can now print t-shirts quite easily. They can make graphic artist designs, prints on their computer. They can hook it up USB to a printing press in their garage, or order some t-shirts and sell them online, get them off into Canada Post, or get them delivered quite easily now around the world. So what type of location are you going to have? And you also got to look into the legalities of it. So let's say you want to wash vehicles on the weekend. There's actually quite a big market for washing vehicles, but is that allowed in your neighborhood or in your city or in your township? Are you allowed to use chemicals and be able to wash them down the regular sidewalk drains? Are you able to do that? Is that illegal? Do you want to do that as an Indigenous person? And do you want to use more sustainable products? And what regulations come with those? So these are all things you need to think about as an entrepreneur. Or do you have office space? Are you going to be renting that space from somewhere? Are you going to be leasing it? Are you looking at having a storefront? Again, we talked about if you do have a storefront, you're taking on legalities of people physically coming onto your property, and now you have a duty of care to make sure that they're safe at all times on your property. You're going to have an online presence these days as well, so that's part of your location that you need to have. So you're going to have to design a website or get somebody to design and build you a website. They're very easy to do these days now with drop and drags like Wix and that kind of technology. So if you're good at putting together a nice displayed PowerPoint, you can usually put together your own website nowadays, no problem. And again, do you want to own the building that you're operating out of, or lease the building? That's going to be affect your costs and your approach to the business as well. So if you do buy the business, well, that's a large commitment you're making. Leasing, it's a little bit more flexible. Say if you're not sure where the business is going to be in a year, maybe you might have to downscale, maybe you have to upscale. You're not sure, so maybe the leasing is more of the route to go. Again, these are all decisions you're going to have to think about as an entrepreneur. And staying legal. So I have touched on this. There's a lot you got to think about. Zoning bylaws. Again, if you're operating your business from your home, what kind of business is it, and what kind of zoning bylaws will you have to abide by? Are you selling food, liquor, or cannabis? Because there's a lot of regulations that go into selling any one of those items, and you need to be able to follow them and know what those regulations are depending where you are. Are you in on or off reserve? Are you in a province? Which province regulates the food and liquor and cannabis sales around you? So collection of various taxes. Again, are you operating on or off reserve to non-Indigenous clients or Indigenous clients? That's all going to affect if you're paying taxes or not. Certain things you need to have permits for. So say fireworks, or say ammunition, or you're selling hunting rifles. You definitely need to have seller's permits for all of those, including things like food, liquor, and cannabis as well. Those need certain permits. Employee registration. So if you have employees, there's a lot of regulations that go now to having an employee that you need to be abiding by and looking into. You're going to have various types of insurance. So for example, if you're a consultant, you're going to have OEM insurance. That's errors and omissions insurance. Do you know what that is? What is that going to cost you? If you're going to have, or if you're selling different types of products, you're going to have a different type of insurance. So you need to look into all of these legalities. The professional licensing. So if you're selling, say, real estate or finances or financial investing advice, you have to be a professionally licensed professional to do that. You can't just go out and start selling real estate or giving financial advice to people. Those are regulated industries. Reporting requirements as well. So if you do get, say, some grants or some lending money, you're going to have to be able to report back to these lenders to say, hey, this is how I spent the money. This is the results I've gotten so far. So you're going to have to know a lot of how to type up reports and keep track of everything. A lot of administration, disposal, reclamation regulations. So like, again, we kind of talked about if you're say if you're washing cars, that's part of disposal reclamation regulations that you're getting into. Import export laws. Are you looking to be international? You got to look into a lot of those. And there's other things like the J Treaty that affect Indigenous people. So how is that going to play into your business plans as well? So these are all things you need to think about staying legal. And then working with professionals. So of course, there's a lot of moving parts. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but this is why it's important to work with professionals, because they can help keep all of this in play for you. So mentors, colleagues, friends, you need to start seeking out people who are already in business or who are only a step or two ahead of you, and start seeking out their advice. People are more than willing to help if you're very respectful and say, hey, I really admire what you're doing. Can I look to you for some advice? Can I pick your brain for half an hour and buy you coffee? More people will be so willing to sit down and share their story with you. It's unbelievable how many people don't ask that question. So make sure you're tapping into mentors, colleagues, and friends who are already at the level that you want to be at. Lawyers are very important for contracts. If you're a contractor, so you want to make sure you're getting someone to professionally review your contracts. If you're incorporating, you want to make sure you do it properly. If you got trademarks, patents, if you're an inventor of any sort, you want to know that. If you come up with some cool marketing, branding, things that I've come up with. So I've made sure I've trademarked certain things as well. You want to work with an accountant if you're not that great at finances, and to help with your taxes and your tax returns. And it's always important to keep your taxes and tax returns up to date, because people are going to want to see your potential. They're going to want to see your sales. So you need to be able to report that in an official way. So it's important to have an accountant to help you with your taxes, especially around tax season. Insurance brokers, I mentioned a lot about having different types of insurance. So it's important to have an insurance broker who can go over all these options with you. And a mortgage broker as well, if you're looking at owning your own properties, when it comes to purchasing, say, maybe a storefront or purchasing a home as well. Because purchasing a home in real estate is part of a business. People do that as entrepreneurial endeavors as well. So working with a real estate agent will help as well when it comes to purchasing property. And then once you start making it well for yourself and you got some money coming in, you're going to want to work with a financial advisor to make sure you're investing your money properly and making sure it works for you. Then working with facilitators, engineers, consultants, they're all specialized in your field to help you. So these are all some of the professionals that you should be thinking about working with or scoping out to help you along with your journey. So I think that brings us right to the 1 hour mark. I know I threw a lot at you there, so I hope there was a lot of good, useful information for everybody and to be able to be shared. So we'll go ahead and open it up for any Q&As that you have. Look me up on LinkedIn. Here's my info on the side if you want to get a hold of me. And also, I suggest getting on LinkedIn as well as an entrepreneur, as a business professional, if you're not already on there. So thank you, and Miigwech. So we'll open her up to the floor for everybody.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Great information, took lots of notes. Anybody have any questions? I don't want to take up too much time. We want to honor your time. Questions, bring them on in. Also, there is take note of the contact information that is provided for you. I think that that's really excellent and really kind of you, Stephen, to offer that if people want to get in touch with you. So thank you for that. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Ken.
I see Jonathan's hand is up there. Come on in, Jonathan.
Awesome. Miigwech, Michelle. Great presentation, Stephen. Really, really appreciate it. I've had numerous of opportunities here in the community to touch base with you. But then when I seen this over Can-Do, I was like, I have to jump on this. I have to learn a little bit more. Excellent information. There was a comment in the chat on looking forward to part 2. I too am looking forward to part 2. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little overwhelming. But I'm really happy you provided all of the raw realities behind starting your own business or becoming an entrepreneur. A lot of hesitancy, but I guess that's the risk that we're jumping into if this is the line of work that we wanted to entertain. but I'm definitely looking forward to connecting with you a little bit more offline if that's okay. But great presentation. Thank you all so much.
And like, as I said, risks, yeah, sometimes you got to be willing to take that risks. Some of the greatest people in the world, they've failed more times than the amateurs even attempted. And that's just part of the game. That's part of being great. And that's part of being successful, is you're going to attempt some things and they're not going to work out. And that's part of the journey. And you have to be able to willing to learn from that, those failures, and adapt that to the next step in the journey.
So good, so good. I really appreciate quickly, and then we'll say Examaga, that's it, that's all. But just really quickly, I really appreciate at the very beginning, you broke it down and you were honest and real and saying, like, starting a business is hard work. And if you get past that 5-year threshold, that's good news for you. But to get to that point, so that was a really good reality check right there. But then also you mentioned, you know, so, you know, some people motivation, and I'm one of those people, follow your dreams, follow your heart. And I really appreciated how you just also brought reality into that as well. And to really count the cost, take that space, take that moment, say, okay, this is the dream that I have, but let's look at it realistically. Like, do I have an audience? Is there a market? So just really good information you brought to the table today, Stephen. Thank you so much. Part 1, we got it done. Looking forward to that part 2. And again, we thank you so much for your knowledge, the experience that you brought and shared here. So thank you. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Lots of good things. Jonathan, I know it was a lot of information, but it's a step at a time, and you got this. All right. So take care, everybody. We will see you again soon.
I got a question.
Oh,
Yes.
quickly. Yes, quickly.
Very quick. This is my son Josiah. He wants to say hi. Okay. For the part, as we prepare for the part 2, is there a video that I can present to on this one? Now let's say next week before your part 2 to my members. Was this recorded or?
Yes, that's a great question, Harry. Thank you. Yes, this was recorded. So it will be put on the Can-Do website. And so this exact same presentation will be made available, and you can direct your people to see that. Watch it. Thank you.
Great presentation, by the way. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Timmy Witch.
Awesome. Okay, be well, everyone. Take care.